as the camera is turning on, I'm recognizing I forgot my watch. And then I thought, how interesting. How interesting that today of all days I forgot my watch based on what I think I'm going to think about. And then I thought, well, should I get it? And then I thought, well, I don't need it to tell time. Why do I wear it? Well, it was given to me as a gift, but underneath that gift was an intention. That intention was to demonstrate or to demonstrate status that represented credibility, a degree of professionalism. What is the watch actually signal? I mean, I don't look at it to tell time. There's plenty of other mechanisms or mediums to tell time. And then why do I even wear it, or where does the satisfaction come from actually wearing it? And then it falls more into status and an opportunity to represent quality, right? If you don't have the opportunity, how do you represent quality, the quantity or volume of attention, and to have an opportunity of intention? And why wear the watch if I'm not telling time? And then why do I feel good when I wear the watch? Empowered. How much of my identity is tied to the watch? How much of my identity as an advisor or a consultant is tied to the watch? What's the attire of the consultant, of the professional? Does the professional consultant, the professional advisor, get compensated at the degree that reflects their degrees of innate intelligence and education and level of sophistication and experience and wisdom, absent the attire that represents all of the above? Does the consultant in sandals get paid adequately based on their experience, their experience, their education, their intention, their investment of their space-time, their wisdom? Do they get paid adequately? All right. What's the attire of? Does the attire match the role? And does the attire match the role? And what's the attire for the role? And each role each role that has differing responsibilities based on why it exists, and which is a function of the organization based on what it does and doesn't do, will represent its qualities of value in its attire. Every job will have different ways of expressing what it does and how it's valued in the organization, in the greater society. And so how important is it to match the attire with the role? And what does it mean when the attire, what does it mean, or what could it signal if the attire in the culture today doesn't match the role when yesterday the attire and the role matched? So the attire, what if there's a connection between the attire changing and becoming more opaque, less clear? It's more and more difficult to differentiate between people based on what they do to infer how valuable they are to the organization, to each of us within a capitalistic framework. It becomes more difficult to make judgments on people based on what they do and how valuable they are to us within a capitalist framework. The less clear it is, the less categorical their attire is, in the sense that, okay, that's a fireman. How do I know? I know looking at him. That's a police officer. I know just looking at him. That's a consultant, oh, I just know, look, that's a lawyer, that's a accountant, that's a surgeon, that's an executive, they're in a suit, so the attire reflects back to us what they do and how valuable they are to us through the lens of the organization. And that's a society of old. A society of today, it's becoming less and less clear how valuable people are as it relates to us through the eyes of the organization, through the eyes of capital, through the lens or framework of that hierarchical culture of competence recognized in authority, as in the mere fact that the attire reflects more opacity, more vagueness, less clarity, less precision. I'm not personally making a moral claim here, or like what should or shouldn't be done. It's more of a thought or observation. I wanted to talk today about if culture, as culture becomes the operating system of organization, it's always reflects the operating system or operating nuances of organization. But we've been talking about being a lagging indicator in the past, and today it's a leading indicator. That's a change in society. So if that's the case, what kind of leaders would be capable of creating, sustaining, renewing, reinventing culture? There'd be different human beings, behaviorally, relationally, than the past. What types of leaders actually make the culture work in this new society? Is it the leader that is as rigid in maybe the person that would not have hit record? Because the two extremes would be, I could have not recorded yet and just put the watch on. And even though I'm not using it to tell time, but it was given to me, and I know why it was given to me because I asked and there was a discussion, and then at least that's consciously why it was given to me in my counterpart. Doesn't mean that there can't be an argument of other reasons why they did what they think they did that they don't know that they thought about, that they didn't think, that influenced their thoughts of why it was given it. But I believe I know why I was given it, to signify credibility and to help me establish my own self-esteem around what it is I've accomplished in the actual real world within the domain that I've been studying for all of these years and working with clients and actually attempting to and being told back in results and by others that there's value there. The watch as a gift is like stand up straight with your shoulders back, as Peterson would say. As well as, why is it actually something that I would want to put on and get value from? Well, it's because it represents exactly, like it's symbolically representing in a physical form all that time, all that investment, and what the good, the bad, and ugly that's come from it. And others will see it, and then they'll say, credibility. Okay. Not everyone, of course. Some would see. Then it goes into a bigger conversation of what type and how close or far away is an object in its perceived and actual utility, not just in what it does, but how it's perceived by society, and the perception that comes with that. Meaning, if a person is wearing a watch on their wrist that is their entire net worth is a different human, how they're showing up the world and what they're projecting is different than a person that's wearing a watch that is 1/1000th of their net worth on their, and they're going to signify different things for people to think about around who they are and what they do and why they do what they do, and they'll signal different things. So I had to wait for this I'm recording myself on here so I can think more about this. Follow this string wherever it goes, and then think more through it, write more through it, filter it, conceptualize it. Even right now what I'm doing is the nakedness. Okay, so here we go. Are these two extremes? Not record, hit the watch, back on, never even have this conversation with myself where you are watching me talk to myself, with myself, while with you, because even though you don't exist, in some sense you don't exist, because you like, who are you? Are you there? Are you not there? Whoever is watching, you don't exist, but you do exist at the exact same time as I'm having this conversation with myself. But it's not just with myself, it's through myself, and everything that I've come to, everything that I've read, written, every person that I've engaged with at varying capacities through working, and I'm supposed to be in life, and I'm co-creating this with myself as I'm working on the next books to complete the series of 30 Days of Thought. In the back of the book, there's a handful more books that have to be done. Why? Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Or the doing of those books will help me answer some of the questions that I have and ask better questions that continue to, living out whatever it is my life's purpose as an individual is in this world. It's like, that's what I'm pursuing. It just so happens to be valuable or not valuable, depending who I'm talking to in the capacity of business and corporate culture and organizational design and systems thinking and family governance and business consulting and so on and so forth. I can keep going, but to put the watch on or not to put the watch on, that's the question. It's like these two extremes, because the topic that I wanted to talk about is like, what type of leaders actually are the leaders for this, for the business culture today, based on culture being a leading indicator and not a lagging indicator. It's in some sense, and then there is a degree of like, do I think I'm that type of leader? There was like a cringe moment. No, I don't think so with that whatsoever. Does that say more about me? And does that make me better or worse or somewhere in the middle? And it's like this conversation, because in one extreme, I could have just put the watch on and never said anything, and then just mentioned the topic that I'm thinking about, like the types of leaders that actually create and curate and renew and maintain and lead cultures in modernity, like modern day today, the types of leaders organizations actually need in a world where things are changing. The younger generation have different values. The mentor-mentee dichotomy is being disrupted by work from home, as well as access to information through technologies like whomever you are watching this or watching that. I never finished that thought earlier about who you are, but like this in a sense is another degree of vulnerability and transparency as I write these books, to actually bring you into my process as a thinker, advisor, consultant of companies as it relates to culture and leadership and organizational design and so on and so forth, business advisory, and teaching entrepreneurs how to think and lead and develop and attract and talent and retain talent and build their visions and missions and value structures and by bringing the world into the process, there's a degree of nakedness and inferiority and falsity, and because essentially this is I'm co-creating this with myself as I'm talking and thinking and trying to respond to intuition and to reason and to whatever else is going on to attempt to figure out what I actually think and what's going on with the world and business, and answering these questions to show it live, because unedited, it's not live, but unedited, and of course you have to trust that it wasn't going to edit it, before I go to the next thing, which is to actually write based on all of this information that is being recorded, so that it can be siphoned, filtered, analyzed, and then I can write, and which is a different form of thinking and trying to clarify what exactly it is I'm saying and how many different thoughts are there that could become, it's like I'm throwing all these seeds out, and some of them are going to sprout up and become great oaks, and others are going to become, they're just going to die. Some will become weeds, and it's like you're a part of this. And is this nakedness and vulnerability of the subject matter expert in the making? Because if I do this, if meaning this could be the last one ever, based on shame or pride or whatever, or there's 1,000 more, and reading and talking and thinking live, or not live, but recorded would be better, and then writing after 1,000 with citations and bibliography and so on, an actual index, you'd say, oh, that's a book. But you're reading the book, you're reading and experiencing. You're not you're not in the sewer going through all the muck like the author. But right now you are. If you're watching this series, you're in the sewer, in the muck, trying to find the gold with me, co-creating this. And at some level in this new world, this is the point of this. And I don't know that it was or wasn't. I took the risk, whatever, feel and look like a fool and an idiot, to go on this whole diatribe about this metaphor with the watch, because I genuinely forgot my watch. But then I thought, what a metaphor, because I'm not wearing the watch, the object that represents the value of authority and hierarchy and prior competence and action through actions, and that signifies congruence of thoughts and words. I'm not wearing the watch that I wouldn't even tell time. It represents all these other things from the standpoint of authority. I'm the leader. Doesn't mean I actually am, but it's a signal of authority. And there's all this energy, all these stories and biases based on the culture, depending on who you're relating to. Somebody that's bought into the capitalism, like a business person, is going to, if I'm just using a generality to make a point that may or may not be accurate, is going to say, all right, that's a professional. Someone that's against the system may look at the watch and say, I'm not interested in getting closer to this person. That what they value is something that doesn't align with my personal identity. I would never wear a watch because I don't tell time. So the only reason to wear a watch would be to signify something else that contradicts the very utility of the watch. So why even wear it? Well, watches, they existed to tell time. The people back then that wore the watches, they needed to know what time it was so they could get to this and get to that, be more productive. And that's just my interpretation of it, right? I'm going to wear the watch, and then over time, of generations of people that it would make sense. Time being the necessity to tell time for the executive that is making the final decision. Their time has a relationship with the utility of production, with labor, logistics. The Andrew Carnegie is going to be looking at his watch in his pocket of are we on time? Why? Because when we're talking about an organization's culture is partially going to come from the purpose that results from the clarity of its vision and its mission, which that leader at the very top of that pyramid, their eye, not the eye of Saruman, maybe it is. Their eye, it's like the eye on the money. Their eye is looking out. The eye of Osiris can see all in if you rule 4 of Beyond Order, Osiris getting killed by Seth. Osiris was the pharaoh that could see it all, and then he stopped paying attention, and then he got killed by his brother. So the eye, the vision, like the leader needs to know the time, because the time is part of the vision. Time influences behavior. Like, we're out of time. For example, I know there's only so much time when I'm recording this today, because an agreed upon time was made verbally, and I intend on keeping it based on other expectations. See, I'm slowing down because this damn thing it's loading, and it's important to me that I have it. I could later play the audio record, but then it takes more time. I'd rather do 2 things at the same time, and I'm doing it myself. Now in the future, somebody else could just download it all, or maybe even technology advances, it does it itself, but I'm doing it myself. So what I'm doing myself that then is slower than outside of myself, my word permitted is going down relative to other things that I'm responsible for, that I'm accountable to. So because this thing was slowing down, it was loading, and I had to click a button again so it could follow all the things I'm saying in this moment, it actually created parameters on what I could do and what I wouldn't do, and influenced this relationship that we're having here, whoever you are, outside of the fact that you're here and I'm talking to you, is influencing how I'm talking to myself. It's like I'm talking through myself, to myself, through myself, and the whole, everything, and the culture, because I'm trying to explore these ideas with you. It also influences how I'm showing up. If I'm as performative, if the camera's not rolling, then it could signify a bigger problem. Oh, that's, if you're laughing at me, I hope you're laughing at and with. That makes me happy either way. What I was saying was, if I know that we'll get back to Carnegie there. If I know I have only so much time, how does that influence my word per minute? I might talk more quickly, jump from topic to topic more quickly without fully exploring the depths of each metaphor, each story, each analogy, how I view how much time I have, and how that can influence what it is I think, what it is I want to say, I think I'm trying to say, but I'm also following the string of anything. I'm trying to explore as vulnerably and openly and creatively as possible with you, because that's what makes most sense to me. That's what feels ironically safest, and in a sense, it's another metaphor for this whole point, which is why I picked the watch. The leaders of today will have to be able to comport themselves, lead, execute in a degree of spotlight on how they show up in the world with a finer tooth comb as the world becomes flatter with technologies and the competition for attention. The leaders will have to have potentially, so this is going to, a degree of sophistication beyond the very human being that would be attracted to business in the first place. Like, people can educate themselves right out of business. So that could pose a lot of problems. I mean, if you think, what if we see less of a entrepreneurial class and more of a managerial class, and the phenomenon of private investment? I should probably finish that other thought. Private investment, I'll come back to this, coming in and incentivizing everyone to actually work for a period of time, to labor and be like an intrapreneur or an internal entrepreneur based on how they're incentivized financially. See, just to go back to the watch thing for a second, not wearing the watch and being all right with it, it's because I don't need that to signify my value. I'm okay, and I'm not telling time with it either. I don't need to wear it. I've accepted it based on based on feedback I've gotten. Obviously, a gift has other meaning, but based on also not really clear, like, what is the attire? And then I was thinking, well, does the consultant in sandals get paid adequately based on the amount? Well, that depends, of course, who your customer is. And also it depends on your brand and what you have out there that signifies it. Well, the less books, the less content, the less of a following, you know, and depending on the, you know, and depending on the age or the generation, certain that attire will attract certain stories that will signify value based on those parties. So it's the symbolism, the track record, the education, and those will signify authority, which implies competence. Today, those things may not be as important as they were in the past, but the question is, if that's happening, where the symbols that represent those stories are breaking down, something as subtly as, we're not sure who the CEO is and who the just to say new intern is based on what they're wearing. It's not clear who is in charge. I'm not, you know, what does that project, that leadership, what's going to be more important for leadership in the future? The future being today. Today is now the future. Well, it would be just off the top, well, I've thought about this for some time, off the top of my head. People want to be treated like people. But this is the thing, at work, that creates a lot of conflict or confusion, because people at work are equal as human beings, right? The basic, you know, as equal as human beings. However, at work, people become unequally valuable from a economic, from a hierarchical, organizational, what's and how's. They become unequal in what they do and how valuable it is to the organization. Implicitly, without anybody talking about it, just what happens. And the role of the leader, leaders lower the temperature in spite of that. In spite of that being the case, and this is where kindness and listening and training and actually letting people go when it's the right time, which is a whole nother, the right time, who gets to decide what's right? Well, the people that are ultimately accountable for when it doesn't happen do, and how they do it is going to reflect what they value and how capable they are of treating people with dignity as human beings while respecting everyone else in the organization based on judging them for what they're doing and how they're doing it. Because in an organization, human beings, it's a combination, it's what they do and how that impacts everyone else and ultimately creates value for the customers and shareholders, influences how they're influences who they are to the organization and their work identity. But like if their personal identity is more important than their work identity and the organization, that can create a negative feedback loop where people are where people are not being held to account for what they actually provide and produce. And this is where, here's an example of this in a very clear, well, that's like, I don't know if I get to decide that. This is an example of this. People, some people don't like saying we're a family at work, and others say it's not a family, it's a team. So that family team discussion, something I found from interviewing and observing, people don't like the family example because they'll say often you can't, say certain things. So now, team, they feel more able to hold people accountable. However, there's exceptions on both sides. There's cultures where they hold, they say we're a family and accountability is held. And then there's cultures where they say we're a team and there is not accountability. Because just like, it's not really about the language. It's more so what's actually happening. And people try to flip the language because they're trying to cure what it is that's not happening. They'll flip the language versus actually analyzing the behavior and looking at what their behaviors are, their habits and their rituals are. But that's an example. It's like, we don't want a family culture because we're not going to hold each other accountable. Well, there are families that do so. And then there are also families that don't. And then there are also teams that hold each other accountable. There are teams that don't. And ultimately the commonality here is, are we direct with one another? Do we share what we think when we think it? Are we direct with one another? And what elements actually lead to that sharing? And then it's also, are we direct? How quickly are we sharing? And then the quality, right? How do we share? Because there's degrees on extremes of someone that is direct and rude versus indirect. And if they're indirect, they could be very polite, indirect, polite, but then the triangles form where there's talking, like person A and person B have a disagreement. Person A goes person C, person B goes to person D. And now, A goes to C, B goes to D, and now C and D can talk about the others, and then E and F know what's going on because person C goes to F, and then D goes to G, I think. B, because A went to C and B went to D, and then C. Well, at least I know my ABCs. So somewhat. And now everyone in the organization has an opinion of what A and B were unable to reconcile. They couldn't come together directly in conversation. And sometimes agree to disagree falls apart. This is where leadership comes in. The leadership, and this is where systems thinking comes in and governance, because direct communication can be so overwhelming. The truth can be so overwhelming. Neither party can do it without the other, which leads into like, and how does the organization actually influence? Is it safe enough to speak what one thinks and what one feels within the organization? And the leaders, those that lead with the symbols and banners of authority, signal to everyone else the rituals of behavior and how they behave. But that is not it. It's also represented in language, in what the values are. And of course the values become valueless when the values are not lived out, and also not others that aren't living them out are held to account. So the leaders that are, if I say leader one more time, oh man. If a culture has become the operating system of the modern organizations, culture has always been the operating system of modern organizations, just the responsibility to act out or operate that is going to be as high as there's tension between the attention of the employees on their task at hand